Electric Avenue is a market street in Brixton. It takes its name from the fact that when it was built in the 1880s, it was one of the first streets in London to be lit by electricity. Well, that's the end of that video. Oh wait, I forgot. It had a song named after it. Given that that's probably why you clicked on this video, I ought to talk about that. So the song Electric Avenue was released by Eddie Grant in 1983, reaching number 2 in the charts on both sides of the Atlantic. That it was written, and that it had such exposure, was due to a couple of sort of happy accidents. The first was that while emigrating to Barbados, much of Grant's material had been lost, and so he wrote Electric Avenue, among other songs, to replace this. The second was a video shot in Barbados, not Brixton, which received a lot of play on MTV. The song was a direct response to the Brixton riots of 1981, and therein lies a tale. Brixton had been a major black community since the arrival of the Windrush due to the immigrants receiving temporary housing in the former deep-level shelter on nearby Clapham Common, and Brixton being the nearest labour exchange. I actually did a video about this a while back. I'll see if I can link to it below. Since then, tensions had arisen. The 70s had already seen a recession grip the UK, with closures of many of the country's traditional heavy industries resulting in millions being thrown out of work. The African-Caribbean community in Brixton, though, were disproportionately affected, with a high rate of poverty, unemployment and crime. Indeed, 65% of the unemployed in the borough of Lambeth were black, and a third of housing was below standard. The official solution was to deal with the symptoms of deprivation rather than the cause, to increase the amount of police in the area. This was the heyday of the Special Patrol Group, a metropolitan police division designed to combat serious crime and public disorder, which had gained a reputation for use of excessive force. The 1970s had also seen overzealous enforcement of the notorious Sus Law. The basic essence of the Sus Law was to enable the police to stop, search and arrest anyone they deemed to be a bit dodgy. Disproportionately, those stopped under the law tended to be black. The programme of increased policing in Brixton was known as Swamp 81, an unappealing name with an even less appealing origin, a 1978 speech by Margaret Thatcher suggesting that the UK, in her words, might be rather swamped by people of a different culture. Police tactics were heavy-handed, with 943 people stopped and searched in just one 5-day period. I'll let you guess what ethnicity most of the supposed suspects were. The national press were perceived as being unsympathetic towards the black community. Tensions were building rapidly. The final straw was, ironically, a misunderstanding. On the 10th of April 1981, a young black man named Michael Bailey had been stabbed, and 2 policemen tried to take Bailey to hospital in their car. Onlookers thought the police were arresting Bailey and even interpreted his heavy bleeding as being caused by police brutality. The crowd turned nasty, hurling missiles at the car. Police reinforcements arrived in an attempt to calm things down and continued to arrive through the night. The following day, heavy-handed police tactics served only to escalate matters, and the disorder accelerated into a full-blown riot. More missiles were thrown, buildings were set on fire, and police vehicles were overturned. The fire brigade refused to attend, despite the many fires that had been set. The police had no real strategy, poor communication, and inadequate riot gear. The riots continued into Sunday. By the time the violence had died down, 282 people had been arrested, and more than 364 people, the majority of them police officers, had been injured. In addition, 145 businesses had been burned, smashed or looted. The following months would see further rioting elsewhere in London, as well as in Leeds, Liverpool, Leicester, Luton, Edinburgh, Birmingham, Nottingham, Manchester, Cardiff, Stockport, Derby, Portsmouth, Preston, Sheffield, Southampton, Newcastle and Wolverhampton. In the aftermath, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher downplayed the role of racial tensions and economic factors in the riots. However, a report released that November by Lord Scarman was more damning, placing blame for the events squarely on social deprivation, a total lack of engagement between the police and the community, and racist policing. Although it stopped short of claiming institutional racism, as the inquiry into the Stephen Lawrence murder later would. By then, the sus law had been abolished for several months. 1984 would see a new code of conduct for the police implemented, and the Police Complaints Commission would be founded in 1985, although allegations of institutional racism and racial profiling would remain. Brixton would see further riots in 1985 and 1995, both over police actions against members of the local African Caribbean community. Indeed, at the time of filming this, Britain is seeing widespread Black Lives Matter demonstrations. Perhaps things aren't as bad as they were in 1981, but it seems that many would argue that there's still, as Eddie Grant observed, a lot of work to be done.